Blood-red sun sets over Apache lands, where ancient spirits whisper through winter winds. Through stinging snow, Tahzay, last son of the great medicine man, watches a pale-faced woman collapse. Her swollen belly carries new life, yet her own. People left her to the mercy of the storm. The elders speak of signs, white settlers bring only death. But in her desperate eyes, Tahzay sees what others cannot, a soul as fierce as any warrior's. His father's warning echoes, the path between. Two worlds leads only to darkness. Yet as thunder rolls across sacred mountains, Tahzay feels the great spirit stir. When ancient wisdom clashes with the heart's truth, which path leads to honor? Will a warrior's choice to save an enemy change the destiny of two peoples forever? Before we jump back in, tell us where you're tuning in from, and if this story touches you, make sure you're subscribed because tomorrow I've saved something extra special for you. The beaded necklace caught Tahzay's eye first. Delicate white. Shells strung on faded blue ribbon, clutched in her frozen fingers like a lifeline to a world left behind. He dismounted Shadowrunner, his paint horse pawing nervously at the deepening snow. The woman's dark hair had come loose from its pins, whipping around her face in the bitter wind. Her dress, once fine, but now torn and mud-stained, spoke of a long journey. She stirred at his approach, her eyes widening with a mix of fear and desperate hope. Tahzay held up his hands, palms forward, remembering how his father would approach wounded deer, slow, steady, speaking in soft tones that conveyed peace, even if the words weren't understood. "Be still," he said in English, one of the few phrases he'd learned from traders. "No harm." The woman pressed herself against a snow-laden pine, one hand protectively covering her swollen belly. "Please," she whispered, her voice barely carrying over the wind. "My baby." Tahzay saw the tracks leading back toward the wagon train. Single set of footprints, no return marks. They had left her here deliberately. His jaw tightened. Even enemies offered mercy to the pregnant and weak. These settlers spoke of civilization, but acted with savage cruelty. He reached slowly for his medicine bag, drawing out a worn blanket that still carried his mother's scent of sage and pine smoke. The woman flinched as he approached, but the cold was a greater enemy than any fear. When he draped the blanket around her shoulders, she clutched it gratefully. "Sarah," she said, touching her chest. "Sarah Matthews." Tahzay nodded, though names held different meaning for his people. A person was more than a single word. They were their deeds, their spirit, their place in the great web of life. But for now, Sarah would do. "Tahzay," he replied, then pointed to Shadowrunner. "Ride safety." She glanced back toward the wagon train's distant tracks, now rapidly disappearing under fresh snow. Whatever lay behind her, death walked these hills tonight. The choice was simple: trust this stranger or perish in the storm. Sarah nodded, her hand still pressed to her belly. Tahzay helped her onto Shadowrunner, noticing how she bit back a cry of pain. The cold had already started its cruel work on her fingers and toes. His father had taught him the healing ways of their people, passed down through generations. Tonight, those skills would serve a most unexpected patient. As they rode through the deepening storm, Tahzay felt the weight of his father's eagle feather, medicine bundle against his chest. The sacred objects within spoke of balance, of the delicate harmony between all things. By saving this woman, he risked disturbing that balance. The elders would say he invited disaster. But as Shadowrunner picked his way carefully through the snow-laden pines, Sarah's quiet strength reminded him of another teaching. The Great Spirit moves in ways we cannot always understand. Sometimes the path of honor leads where we least expect. The storm was growing fiercer, but Tahzay knew these mountains like his own heartbeat. There was a place, a sacred cave, where his father had taught him the healing ways. It wasn't far, and its entrance faced away from the bitter north. Wind, there at least, they could wait out the worst of the storm. Sarah's grip on his waist weakened, her breath coming in shallow gasps. The cold was taking its toll. Tahzay urged Shadowrunner faster, knowing each moment could mean the difference between life and death, not just for Sarah, but for the innocent life she carried. As they rode, the beaded necklace slipped from Sarah's numb fingers. Without thinking, Tahzay caught it, feeling the smooth shells warm against his palm. In that moment, holding this fragment of her world, while carrying her to safety in his, he understood that some boundaries were meant to be crossed. Some walls were built to be torn down. The sacred cave lay ahead, a dark mouth in the white world. Of the storm, Tahzay whispered a prayer to the spirits of this place, asking their blessing for what was to come. Tonight, in this space between worlds, ancient medicine would meet desperate need, and the path of two peoples would begin to intertwine in ways none could foresee. Inside the sacred cave, shadows danced on ancient walls as Tahzay kindled a small fire. His father's medicine bundle lay before him, each item wrapped in soft deerskin and imbued with generations of healing wisdom. Sarah lay wrapped in blankets near the fire, her face pale in the flickering light, her breathing shallow but steady. "Father," he whispered in Apache, "guide my hands tonight." The bundle opened to reveal his inheritance, dried herbs tied with sinew, crystals that caught the firelight, bone needles, and the most sacred item, a small clay pot of healing salve, made from a recipe unchanged for countless generations. His father's voice echoed in memory. "Medicine is not just in the herbs, my son. It lives in the space between healer and patient, in the trust that bridges worlds." Tahzay selected sage leaves and juniper berries, adding them to boiling water. The familiar scent filled the cave, mixing with wood smoke. Sarah stirred, her eyes following his movements. "Your hands," he said in halting English, gesturing for her to extend her frozen fingers. She complied, wincing as circulation returned. The frostbite hadn't progressed too far. The spirits had guided them in time. Tahzay began applying the sacred salve, murmuring healing prayers in Apache. Though she couldn't understand the words, their rhythm seemed to soothe her. Her feet required more attention. Tahzay worked methodically, remembering his father's teachings about the body's hidden pathways. "All healing flows like water," he'd said. "Find the blocked paths, gentle them open, let life return drop by drop." Sarah watched him work, her initial fear giving way to cautious trust. When he offered the medicinal tea, she drank without hesitation. Something passed between them in that moment, an understanding deeper than words. "The baby," she said, suddenly grimacing. "Something's wrong." Tahzay's heart quickened. Birth complications were dangerous enough in summer with experienced midwives present. Here, in winter's grip, with his limited English and her fear, he touched his medicine bundle, feeling his father's presence. The old man had delivered countless babies, teaching Tahzay the sacred songs that eased difficult births. But those were Apache women who understood the ancient ways. Would these medicines work on a white woman? Would her body recognize these prayers? Yet as he looked at Sarah's face, drawn with pain and worry, he saw beyond color and culture to something universal. A mother's love, a child's need, the sacred dance of life-seeking expression. Tahzay selected specific herbs, ones his father had used to calm troubled wombs. As he worked, he sang softly, healing songs passed down through generations. Sarah's tension gradually eased, her breathing steadied, and the child within her grew still. Outside, the storm raged on, but inside this ancient space, two worlds began to merge. Tahzay realized that every movement, every decision now carried the weight of both futures, his people's and Sarah's. The elders would say he risked everything by bringing enemy medicine into a sacred place. But watching Sarah finally drift into exhausted sleep, Tahzay understood what his father had meant about the true nature of healing. Medicine wasn't about sides or boundaries. It was about preserving life, nurturing hope, fostering the spark of divine creation that dwelled in all beings. He added wood to the fire and settled back to keep watch, one hand resting on his medicine bundle. The artifacts within had been passed down through generations of healers, each adding their own wisdom to the collective knowledge. Tonight, perhaps, new wisdom would be added, about courage, compassion, and the bridges that could be built between divided peoples. Dawn was still hours away, and with it would come new challenges. But for now, in this cave that had sheltered healers for countless generations, Tahzay felt at peace with his choice. The path ahead was uncertain, but he would walk it with honor, guided by the wisdom of his ancestors and the courage of his convictions. Dawn broke over the mountains, painting the snow-laden pines in shades of rose and gold. Tahzay returned from checking Shadowrunner to find Sarah awake, holding something he hadn't noticed before, a crumpled piece of paper pulled from her dress pocket. As he approached, she smoothed it against her knee. It was a wanted poster, the ink slightly smeared but still legible. Wanted for theft and deception, Sarah Matthews, last seen with Wagner Wagon Train, $50 a reward for information leading to arrest. Below the text was a rough sketch of Sarah's face, younger and harder than the woman who sat before him now. Her fingers traced the edges of the paper, trembling slightly. "They said I stole money from the wagon master," she said quietly, her voice stronger after a night of rest. "But it wasn't true. Mr. Wagner, she pressed her hand protectively over her swollen belly, the gesture saying more than words could. Tahzay understood then. The wagon master's crime, her shame, the community's cruel judgment. Such men existed in every tribe, every people, those who used power to hurt the vulnerable. A distant sound caught his attention, horses' hooves. Crunching through snow, men's voices carried on the wind. The search party had not given up. "They're coming," Sarah whispered, fear tightening her features. "They'll kill you for helping me." Tahzay moved to the cave's entrance, scanning the valley below. 6 riders, armed with rifles, following Shadowrunner's partially obscured tracks. The fresh snow had hidden much, but these men were experienced trackers. He returned to Sarah, gathering his medicine bundle with swift, practiced movements. "We must go. Higher caves, harder to find." She struggled to her feet, one hand braced against the cave wall. "I'll only slow you down. Leave me." "No!" The word came out sharper than he intended. In Apache, he added words she couldn't understand, but whose meaning his tone made clear. "I did not defy my people's wisdom to abandon you now." A rifle shot cracked through the morning air, a warning or a signal to others. They were running out of time. Tahzay led Sarah to a narrow passage at the back of the cave, one his father had shown him years ago. It led upward through the mountains, connecting to a network of higher chambers. Few knew of these paths. They were sacred places, used for vision quests and healing ceremonies. As they climbed, Sarah's breath came in harsh gasps, but she didn't complain. Tahzay saw in her the same spirit he recognized in Apache women. Muzzled strength wrapped in grace, resilience born of suffering. The passage opened into a larger cave, this one with a hidden spring trickling down one wall. Ancient pictographs covered another wall, stories of his people, painted by hands long turned to dust. Sarah sank down, exhausted, while Tahzay listened for pursuit. "Why are you helping me?" she asked suddenly. "Your people, they must see me as an enemy." Tahzay touched the medicine bundle at his chest, considering his answer. "My father taught. Great Spirit sees no boundaries, only hearts." He met her eyes. "Your heart speaks truth. Their hearts," he gestured toward the valley below, "speak lies." Fresh voices echoed from below. They'd found the first cave. Tahzay moved silently to the passage entrance, preparing to collapse it with stones if needed. The voices grew closer, anger clear in their tone. "She's up here somewhere. Check every cave. That Indian's tracks. Led this way." Sarah pressed herself against the back wall, one hand over her mouth to quiet her breathing. Tahzay notched an arrow to his bow, not to kill, but to warn if needed. His father had taught him that every life was sacred, even those who came as enemies. The voices faded, moving away toward another series of caves visible from the valley. But they would return. This was only the beginning. Tahzay knew his choice to help Sarah had set them both on a dangerous path. The wanted poster was proof that white man's justice was as broken as their promises, and his own people when they learned he'd brought a white woman into sacred caves, used healing medicine to aid an enemy. Yet watching Sarah rest one, hand on her belly, humming softly to comfort her unborn child, Tahzay felt the rightness of his choice. Some paths chose you, his father had said. Honor lay not in walking the easy trail, but in following the one your heart knew was true. The search party's voices drifted up again, carried on the winter wind. They would need to move again soon, find somewhere safer. But for now, in this ancient space where his ancestors' stories watched over them, Tahzay allowed himself to believe that compassion might prove stronger than hatred, that two worlds might find a way to touch without breaking. As dusk approached, Tahzay kindled a small fire in their new shelter. The cave walls rose high above them, disappearing into shadows, but it was what lay beneath those shadows that held Sarah's attention. In the flickering firelight, ancient paintings emerged, ochre and black figures dancing across stone, telling stories that had endured for countless generations. "Your ancestors?" Sarah asked, gesturing to the images. Tahzay nodded, moving the torch closer to illuminate a particular scene. The paintings showed two groups of people, distinct in their dress and appearance, meeting beneath a great sun. Between them stood a figure that seemed to bridge both worlds, neither one nor the other, but something new. "Long ago," he began, his English careful but improving, "different peoples came together here, made peace." He touched the bridging figure. "Child of both worlds brought peace." Sarah's hand went to her belly, understanding dawning in her eyes. "Like my baby could be." Tahzay watched her studying the ancient art, seeing how she traced the figures with her gaze, trying to understand their story. She was different from other white settlers he'd encountered. There was no fear or disgust in her eyes when she looked at his people's sacred stories, only curiosity and respect. Moving along the wall, they discovered more scenes. Hunting, parties, healing ceremonies, great battles, and moments of profound peace. One series of images showed women gathered around a birthing mother, their hands raised in blessing. Sarah lingered here, her expression thoughtful. "Your people," she said softly. "They honor birth differently than mine." She touched her swollen belly. "In the wagon train, they said I brought shame. But here," she gestured to the paintings of the women, their faces serene in eternal ochre. "All life sacred," Tahzay replied. "Child is blessing, always." He opened his medicine bundle, removing a small pouch of red ochre, the same earth pigment his ancestors had used to paint these walls. "Would you learn?" Sarah nodded eagerly. Tahzay showed her how to mix the ochre with a drop of water from the spring, creating the sacred paint. Together they added their own small mark to the wall. A simple handprint, her smaller palm nested within his larger one. As they worked, Tahzay felt the presence of his ancestors watching, judging perhaps, but also understanding. These caves had always been places of power and transformation. His father had told him that the greatest mysteries of life were written not in the paintings themselves, but in the spaces between them, the silent gaps where meaning lived. A sharp kick from her unborn child made Sarah gasp, then laugh softly. "She's strong," she said, then corrected herself. "Or he, I don't know yet." "In our way," Tahzay explained. "Child shows us when ready. Dreams tell us." He hesitated, then added, "My father would say your dreams already know." Sarah closed her eyes, considering this. "I dream of running horses," she said finally, "and a bird that flies between two cliffs without falling." Tahzay smiled. In their tradition, such dreams held clear meaning. A child who would bridge divisions, find paths others couldn't see. But he kept this knowledge to himself for now. Some truths needed time to ripen. A distant wolf's howl echoed through the caves, reminding them of the world beyond their temporary sanctuary. The search party was still out there, and soon they would need to move again. But for now, in this ancient space where countless generations had sought wisdom and shelter, they had found a moment of peace. Sarah yawned, the day's events catching up with her. As she settled onto the blankets near the fire, she looked once more at their joined handprint on the wall. "Will it stay?" she asked. "After we're gone?" Tahzay nodded. Many seasons, many winters, until mountain itself forgets. She smiled at that, drifting toward sleep. Then we'll be part of the story too. Watching her sleep, Tahzay considered her words. They were already part of the story. Their choices, their defiance of boundaries, their trust in something larger than tribal divisions. Like the ancient paintings surrounding them, their tale would be written not just in ochre and earth, but in the changes they set in motion. Outside, snow began falling again, softly erasing their tracks below. But here in the heart of the mountain, their mark would remain, testimony to a moment when two worlds touched and found not conflict, but harmony. The storm came with a fury that even Tahzay had rarely witnessed. Wind howled through the mountain passages, like angry spirits, driving snow so thick it obscured the world beyond the cave's entrance. He added branches to their small fire, careful to keep the smoke minimal. Above the wooden flames, he had hung his mother's blanket, a masterwork of weaving that told the story of his clan through patterns and colors. Sarah sat wrapped in another blanket, watching him work. Over the past days, she had begun learning to read his silence, to understand the meaning in his measured movements. Now, as he settled beside her, she traced a pattern in the hanging blanket with her eyes. "Each color tells a story," she asked. Tahzay nodded, reaching up to touch a band of deep red, blood of our ancestors. His finger moved to a streak of white, first snow on sacred peaks, then to a pattern of interwoven black and gold. Night and day, ever dancing. The wind shrieked outside, making the flames dance. Sarah shivered, not from cold, but from memory. They'll die out there, won't they? The search party? If they are wise, they have found shelter. Tahzay's voice held no judgment. Mountain does not care about man's quarrels. Storm takes all equally. Sarah shifted, wincing at the movement. Her time was growing closer. They both knew it. The baby had been more active, turning and pressing as if seeking its own path into the world. Tahzay had been preparing for this, gathering specific herbs and saying the ancient prayers his father had taught him. "Tell me," Sarah said suddenly, "about your mother, the one who made this blanket." Tahzay was quiet for a long moment, his hands working methodically as he ground herbs for tea. "She was like dawn," he said finally, "gentle light but strong enough to push back darkness. Her hands," he gestured to the blanket, "spoke what her voice could not. Could not? Sickness took her voice when I was young, but she sang through. Her weaving, each blanket was a song." He offered Sarah the tea he'd prepared. "This is her medicine too, for strength." Sarah accepted the cup, inhaling the unfamiliar but comforting aroma. "In the wagon train," she said softly, "they had their own blankets, machine-made all the same. No stories, no songs. I never knew." She touched the weaving. "Never knew." Her cloth could speak. Thunder cracked overhead, and in the same moment Sarah gasped. Tahzay was instantly alert, reading the change in her breathing, the way her hand pressed against her side. "The baby?" She nodded, trying to smile through her concern. "Just moving, but different now, like a storm building." Tahzay understood. Life, like the weather, followed its own rhythms. You could read the signs, prepare for what was coming, but ultimately you had to trust in forces greater than yourself. He began to sing softly, a birthing song his mother had woven into one of her last blankets. Though Sarah couldn't understand the words, she closed her eyes, letting the melody wash over her. Outside, the storm raged, but in here, wrapped. In the stories and songs of his people, they had found a different kind of shelter. "Your people," Sarah said when the song ended. "They say women are sacred when carrying life?" "All women sacred," Tahzay corrected, "but birth time most powerful. Old stories say mountains themselves bow to birthing mother." Sarah laughed softly, then grew serious. "My people, they say it's a curse, pain as punishment for woman's sin." She looked at her hands. "I never believed that, but sometimes when you hear it enough, words are like arrows," Tahzay said. "Some poison spirit, some heal." He touched the blanket again. "My mother knew this, wove blessing words into every thread. Protection, strength." He met Sarah's eyes. blanket is yours. Now baby will need blessing words." Tears welled in Sarah's eyes, understanding the magnitude of this gift. A piece of his mother's voice, her medicine, her blessing, offered across the divide between their worlds. The storm was intensifying, but they barely noticed now. Sarah had begun humming softly, a melody from her own childhood, her fingers, working invisible patterns in the air. Tahzay recognized what she was doing, imagining her own weaving, her own story to tell. In that moment, as thunder shook the mountain and snow sealed them in their sanctuary, something shifted between them. Not the flash of passion that his people's enemies always assumed, but something deeper, a recognition of shared humanity, of strength found in unexpected places, of hope woven from the threads of two different worlds. The night ahead would be long, but they had stories to keep them warm, songs to guide them through the darkness, and a blanket that spoke of love's power to transcend the boundaries men created. The ceremonial drum's deep voice echoed through the sacred council cave, its rhythm matching the heartbeat of the gathered tribe. Tahzay stood before the circle of elders, his father's medicine bundle still at his chest. Through the smoke of sacred herbs, he could see Running Cloud, the oldest of the tribal council, his face carved deep with years of wisdom and worry. "You have brought enemy medicine into our sacred places," Running Cloud said in Apache, each word heavy with significance. "You have shared our healing ways with one who carries white man's child." The drum continued its slow pulse, calling witness to this judgment. Around the circle, other elders watched in silence, their faces illuminated by flickering firelight. "The woman would have died," Tahzay responded, his voice steady. "The child she carries is innocent." "Innocence!" Thunderhorse, the war chief, spat the word. "Was there innocence when they burned our villages, when they poisoned our wells, when they broke every treaty?" Tahzay felt the weight of his father's teachings pressing against his heart. "My father taught that medicine knows no boundaries, that healing—" "Your father is dead," Thunderhorse cut in. "And his wisdom, while great, did not foresee these times." But Running Cloud raised his hand, silencing Thunderhorse. The old man's eyes were distant, seeing beyond the firelit cave to something others couldn't perceive. The drum's rhythm changed, becoming more complex, more urgent. "There was a dream," Running Cloud said softly. 3 nights passed. The ancestors spoke of a child born between worlds, when snow covers the sacred peaks. His gaze focused on Tahzay, a child whose coming would change everything. Murmurs rippled through the council. Dreams were sacred messages, not to be ignored. But Thunderhorse wasn't finished. "Dreams can deceive," he warned. "The white man's god sends false visions to trick us." Running Cloud lifted the ceremonial pipe, its carved bowl depicting the great stories of their people. "The pipe speaks true," he said. "When it is passed, no lies can stand." He filled the pipe with sacred tobacco, lit it with a burning brand from the fire and drew the first breath. Then he passed it to Tahzay. The familiar ritual calmed Tahzay's spirit. As he accepted the pipe, he spoke from his heart. "I do not know if this child is the one of prophecy. I know only that 2 lives were placed in my path, and I chose to honor the teaching that all life is sacred." The pipe continued its journey around the circle, each elder drawing wisdom with the sacred smoke. When it returned to Running Cloud, the old man spoke again. "There is another sign," he said. "The white buffalo has been seen in the northern valleys. 3 days running, its tracks in new snow." This news brought more murmurs. The white buffalo was the rarest of signs, a powerful omen of great change. "So we protect this woman, this child," Thunderhorse demanded, "and bring the anger of every white settlement down upon us." "We protect the prophecy," Running Cloud corrected, "until its meaning becomes clear." He fixed Tahzay with a penetrating gaze. "But know this, son of the medicine man, if you have read the signs wrong, if this brings destruction to our people, the punishment will be banishment. Your name will be forgotten, your spirit cast to the winds." The drum's rhythm faltered, then stopped. In the sudden silence, Tahzay felt the weight of his choice pressing down like winter snow. But he also felt something else, a certainty that transcended fear. "I accept this judgment," he said, "and I ask the ancestors to witness my words. This child will bring not destruction but understanding, not war but peace." Running Cloud nodded slowly, then reached for his own medicine bundle. From it he withdrew a small drum, its surface painted with symbols of prophecy and protection. "Take this," he said. "Its voice will guide the child's spirit when the time comes." His eyes held Tahzay's. "But be warned, others have seen the signs. Others will seek this child for their own purposes. You have chosen a dangerous path, young healer." As Tahzay left the council cave, the early morning sun was just touching the sacred peaks. Soon he would need to return to Sarah, to the cave, where she waited, unknowing of the prophecies and politics swirling around her unborn child. But first, he had his own prayers to offer, his own wisdom to seek from the ancestors who watched from beyond the veil of this world. The first pains came with the rising moon. Sarah gripped the birth cord, a sacred rope woven from strands of horsehair and blessed sinew that Tahzay had prepared according to tradition. Its intricate pattern combined Apache symbols of strength with the Christian cross Sarah had shown, him braided together in a fusion of faith and hope. "It's too early," Sarah gasped, her knuckles white around the cord. "The baby shouldn't come yet." But Tahzay had read the signs. The restless dreams, the way the sacred drum's voice had grown stronger when held near her belly, the golden eagle that had circled their cave 3 times at dawn. The child would come when the spirits willed. He began laying out his tools. Clean cloths boiled with pine needles, the birthing blanket his mother had woven, medicines both traditional and gathered from Sarah's own knowledge. She had been a midwife's apprentice before circumstance sent her west. And over the past days, they had shared their different ways of bringing life into the world. "Tell me again," Sarah said between contractions, "about your people's birthing." "Songs!" Tahzay positioned himself at her side, supporting her as another wave of pain crossed her face. "We sing to guide spirit," he explained, his voice gentle but strong, "to remind child of path between worlds." He began the ancient melody, his voice blending with the winter wind that whistled through the cave's higher openings. Sarah closed her eyes, letting the rhythm wash over her, finding strength in its deep current of power. The hours passed like water over stone, each moment carrying them closer to the inevitable miracle. Tahzay alternated between Apache medicines. Sacred herbs burned in careful sequence, healing hands guided by generations of knowledge, and the practical wisdom Sarah had shared about positioning and breathing. When the pain peaked, Sarah clutched the birth cord with one hand and Tahzay's arm with the other. "I can't," she whispered. "I'm not strong enough." Tahzay reached for Running Cloud's drum, its painted symbol seeming to move in the firelight. "Our strength joins yours," he said, beginning a slow, steady beat that matched her heartbeat. "Ancestors, walk with us now." As if in response, the wind changed, carrying the distant cry of a wolf. Sarah's eyes widened. "The white wolf," she breathed. "From my dreams." Tahzay nodded, understanding. The white wolf was a powerful spirit guide, one his father had said appeared only at moments of great transformation. He deepened the drum's rhythm, weaving it with words of power passed down through countless generations. The birth cord grew, warm in Sarah's grip, almost seeming to pulse with its own life. Later, she would say it felt like holding hands with every woman who had ever brought life into the world, a chain of strength stretching back to the first mother. When the final moment came, Tahzay set aside the drum and moved to catch the child. The cave filled with a light that seemed to come from everywhere and nowhere, the same light his father had described being present at moments of profound medicine. The baby slipped into the world like the first ray of dawn breaking over mountain peaks. In the same instant, a gust of wind extinguished their fire, but the cave remained lit by that mysterious inner light. The child's first cry merged with the wolf's song outside, creating a harmony that made both parents' hearts skip. "A girl," Tahzay said softly, wrapping her in the blessed blanket. "Born at the exact moment of moonset." Another powerful sign. Sarah reached for her daughter with trembling hands. The baby's skin was neither pale like her mother's nor dark like most Apache children. She seemed to glow with a light all her own, as if carrying within her the dawn of something new. Tahzay retrieved the birth cord, now forever imbued with the power of this moment. It would be kept as a sacred thing, a testament to the night when two worlds came together to create something unprecedented. As he worked to tend to Sarah and the baby, using both people's medicines to ensure their health, Tahzay felt the truth of Running Cloud's prophecy. This child was indeed meant to change everything. He could see it in the perfect fusion of features from both peoples, in the way she had come into the world, surrounded by signs and wonders. The white wolf's cry came once more, closer now, as if offering its own blessing. Sarah looked up from their daughter's face, tears mixing with smile. "She needs a name," she whispered, "one that honors both her peoples." Tahzay touched the child's forehead gently, feeling the strong spirit within her new flesh. The name came to him like a gift from the ancestors themselves, a bridge between worlds, just as she would be. The white buffalo hide appeared outside their cave at dawn. None of Tahzay's people would claim responsibility for leaving it, yet there it lay, a sacred offering of incredible rarity, its presence both blessing and burden. He lifted it carefully, feeling the power that seemed to emanate from its pristine surface. Inside, Sarah nursed their daughter, whom they had named Aurora Dawn in English and First Light in Apache, names that spoke to her destiny as a bridge between worlds. The baby's eyes, already alert and wise beyond their hours, followed Tahzay as he brought the hide inside. "What does it mean?" Sarah asked, recognizing the reverence in his handling of the pelt. "White buffalo comes once in many generations," he explained, spreading the hide near them. "Medicine so powerful, even enemies lay down weapons in its presence." He touched the soft fur. This one gave itself in winter, rarest of all signs. As if responding to his words, Aurora reached toward the hide with tiny fingers. In that moment, a shaft of sunlight broke through the cave's upper opening, creating a perfect circle of light around mother, child, and the sacred pelt. Sarah gasped. "Look!" Where the light touched the white hide, rainbow colors danced. Blues, purples, golds that shouldn't be possible in simple fur. Tahzay had heard of this phenomenon, but never witnessed it. His father had called it spirit light, a sign of the greatest medicine. The sound of approaching horses interrupted their wonder, but these weren't the heavy hoofbeats of the search party. Tahzay recognized the gentle stride of Apache ponies and something else, the rhythmic shake of medicine rattles. "The grandmothers come," he said, a mix of relief and apprehension in his voice. The grandmothers were the tribe's most powerful medicine women, keepers of birthing wisdom and ancient knowledge. Their judgment of Aurora would carry tremendous weight. 4 elderly women entered the cave, led by Singing Bird, oldest of the medicine women. Their eyes took in everything: the white buffalo hide, the shaft of light, the peaceful baby at Sarah's breast. Singing Bird approached slowly, her medicine rattle whispering secrets. "We dreamed of this," she said in Apache, then surprised everyone by switching to careful English. 3 nights, same dream. Child of 2 worlds, born on path of white buffalo. Sarah sat straighter, instinctively drawing Aurora closer. But Singing Bird's smile was kind, as she reached into her medicine bag and withdrew a small object wrapped in deerskin. "My grandmother's grandmother saw this day," she continued in her deliberate English. "Left this, saying, 'Keep until the bridge, child.' And comes." She unwrapped the package, revealing a thunderbird carved from rare blue stone, suspended on a cord made from strands of white buffalo hair. Ages old, yet it seemed to gleam like new in the strange light. "May we?" she asked Sarah, gesturing to the baby. After a moment's hesitation, Sarah nodded. Singing Bird lifted Aurora with hands that had helped birth 3 generations of Apache. Children. The other grandmothers gathered round, their rattles creating a soft symphony of spiritual music. They examined the child thoroughly, noting every mark and feature. They paid special attention to a small birthmark behind her left ear, a perfect spiral that Tahzay's people considered a sign of spiritual power. "The marks are true," Singing Bird declared. "All that was foretold." She placed the Thunderbird pendant around Aurora's neck, where it settled as if it had always belonged there. "She will need protection. Many will fear what she represents." The other grandmothers nodded, then began unpacking their own medicine bundles. They had brought gifts, herbs for strength, tiny moccasins sewn with prayers, a cradle board decorated with symbols of both protection and prophecy. "You are not alone now," Singing Bird told Sarah. "What grows in darkness must eventually seek light. The time of separation is ending." She turned to Tahzay. "Thunder Horse still speaks against this, but even he cannot deny the signs. The white wolf has been seen guarding the path to this cave. The morning star burns twice as bright, and now the white buffalo brings its blessing." As if nature itself wished to add its voice, a low roll of thunder echoed through the mountains, unusual for winter, another sign. Aurora, rather than crying at the sound, laughed, a bright, clear sound that made all the grandmothers catch their breath. "It is said," Singing Bird continued, "that when the bridge child laughs, the spirits laugh with her." She touched the Thunderbird pendant. "Each sign builds upon the last. The path ahead will not be easy, but it will be true." The grandmothers began a soft chant then, an ancient blessing sung only for children of great destiny. As their voices filled the cave, the strange light seemed to pulse in rhythm with their song. Sarah didn't need to understand the words to feel their power, their acceptance, their blessing. A broken compass lay in the snow, its needle spinning wildly. A sign Tahzay had learned to read from years of watching white men's tools fail in these sacred mountains. The search party was close, led by a famous tracker named James Eagle Eye Porter. They had abandoned their horses at the base of the cliff, continuing on foot where the terrain grew treacherous. From his hidden vantage point, Tahzay counted 6 men. Their determination had not wavered, even after losing 2 of their original number to the winter storms. If anything, their resolve had hardened into something dangerous, a hatred that could no longer distinguish between justice and vengeance. "They're following the wrong trail," Thunderhorse whispered beside him. The war chief had come not as an ally, but as a protector of tribal secrets. These caves held too many sacred mysteries to risk discovery. Porter's voice carried up the slope. "Fresh tracks here, not more than a day old." Tahzay's heart quickened. The tracks belonged to the grandmothers who had visited yesterday, their passage hidden by what they thought was enough snow. But Porter's reputation was well earned. He could read sign that most men would miss entirely. "Those are animal tracks," another man argued. "We're wasting time up here." "No," Porter insisted, kneeling to brush away snow. "Look at the pattern. Someone's trying to hide their trail, using owl feathers to sweep behind them. Old Indian trick." Thunderhorse's hand tightened on his knife. The grandmother's medicine. Ways were not for white men's eyes. But Tahzay touched his arm, shaking his head slightly. Violence would only bring more searchers, more danger to Aurora. "The woman's dead by now anyway," a third man called out. "No one could survive these storms." "Then where's the body?" Porter demanded. "No, she's alive, and that Indian's helping her. Probably has a whole network of caves up here. These mountains are like Swiss cheese." Tahzay pulled back from the ridge, gesturing for Thunderhorse to follow. They retreated silently to a hidden crevice where they could speak without being overheard. "They get any closer, they'll find the sacred caves," Thunderhorse warned. "Everything our people have protected for generations, our medicines, our histories, our prophecies." "I know." Tahzay withdrew a small pouch of sacred herbs. "But there are ways to turn them aside without bloodshed." Thunderhorse's expression was skeptical, but he watched as Tahzay began a subtle medicine. Using knowledge passed down through generations of healers, he mixed herbs that would ride the wind down to the search party, plants that caused confusion, disrupted concentration, made men doubt their own senses. "My father used this to protect our sacred places during the last war," Tahzay explained. "No one dies, but they lose their way. Their own fears turn them back." As the herbs began to smoke, carried on the winter wind, they could hear the men's voices changing. Their confident tone gave way to uncertainty. These tracks, they don't make sense anymore. The compass is useless. Something ain't right. About these mountains, Porter's authoritative voice rose above the others. Pull back! We're losing the light, and these cliffs get deadly after dark. Thunderhorse nodded, grudging approval, as the men began their retreat. Your medicine is strong, but they'll be back. By then we'll be gone. Tahzay had already planned their next move, a network of caves that led to the summer hunting grounds. It would be a hard journey with a newborn, but staying here had become too dangerous. They waited until the search party's voices faded completely before making their way back to the cave where Sarah and Aurora sheltered. The grandmothers had left them well supplied with food and medicine, knowing they would need to move soon. Sarah looked up as they entered, immediately reading the situation in their faces. They're getting closer? Tahzay nodded, moving to gather. Their essential supplies. The white buffalo hide would come. Its medicine was too powerful to leave behind. The Thunderbird pendant around Aurora's neck gleamed in the firelight, as if responding to the tension in the air. We leave at midnight, he said, when the moon sets and the spirit path is clearest. Thunderhorse surprised them both by speaking directly to Sarah. My people will watch your passage, not for your sake, but for the child's. Her destiny is tied to ours now. The old warrior's acceptance, however reluctant, was another sign of changing times. As they prepared for their journey, Tahzay felt the weight of many worlds converging, past and future, red and white, physical and spiritual, all turning on the tiny axis of Aurora's peaceful sleep. The fever took Sarah 3 days into their journey. One moment she was walking, Aurora bundled safely against her chest. The next, she was falling. Tahzay caught her before she hit the ground, feeling the unnatural heat radiating from her skin. Above them, a red-tailed hawk screamed. 3 times, a warning, a prophecy, a call to power. In the shelter of a new cave, Tahzay worked quickly to create a dream catcher unlike any his people had made before. The outer ring he fashioned from a white willow branch blessed by the grandmothers. For the webbing, he combined sinew from the sacred white buffalo with threads pulled from Sarah's own shawl. At the center, he placed the Thunderbird pendant from Aurora's neck, its blue stone pulsing with strange light. Walk with her, Singing Bird had told him before they left. When the fever dreams come, she must not walk alone. Sarah burned in her blanket, speaking in tongues, sometimes English, sometimes attempting Apache words, sometimes languages unknown to either world. Aurora, remarkably, stayed calm, watching her mother with ancient eyes. Through the dream catcher, Tahzay began his medicine song, calling on all he had learned of both healing traditions. Sarah had taught him about willowbark's power to reduce fever. He had shown her how to pray to the 4 directions. Now he would use everything they had shared to guide her through the spirit world. Follow my voice, he sang in Apache, then in English. Follow the path of healing. In her fever dreams, Sarah walked through worlds. She saw herself in her old life, proper and constrained, serving tea in fine china cups. But the tea turned to sacred medicine, the cups to carved gourds painted with Apache symbols. She saw Aurora growing into a woman of power, walking between worlds with the white wolf at her side. She saw ancient grandmothers from both peoples standing together, weaving a blanket large enough to cover the divide between nations. The child opens the way, they told her, but you must choose to walk through. Tahzay watched Sarah's spirit journey through the dream catcher's web. Its intricate pattern caught and held her visions, helping him see where to guide her. When she wandered too far into shadow, he burned sage and sweetgrass, using the smoke to draw her back. When she grew lost in memory, he shook his rattle, made from a gourd Aurora had touched, calling her forward instead of back. Through it all, the baby seemed to help, her presence a constant anchor. When Sarah's fever peaked near midnight, Aurora reached out and touched her mother's face. In that moment, the Thunderbird pendant flared with blue fire that cast no heat, and Sarah's next breath came easier. She walks in many worlds already, a voice said, and Tahzay turned to find Singing Bird standing at the cave's entrance, though she should have been miles away with the tribe. The fever burns away what separates those worlds. The old medicine. Woman moved to Sarah's side, her steps leaving no mark on the cave floor. She picked up the dream catcher, adding her own power to its medicine. "When I was young," she said, "my grandmother spoke of this time. The people have built walls," she said, "but spirits know no walls. Love knows no walls." She looked at Tahzay. "Your father knew this. It is why he taught you to heal in many ways." Sarah stirred, reaching out blindly. Tahzay took her hand, feeling the fever's hold beginning to break. Through the dream catcher's web, he saw fragments of her visions. The white wolf running beside Apache horses, the thunderbirds soaring between mountain peaks, bridges building themselves across impossible chasms. "She carries truth now," Singing Bird said. "Fever truth, spirit truth. When she wakes, she will be changed." The old woman's form began to fade like morning mist, as we all must change. Dawn broke over the mountains, sending light through the dream catcher's intricate web. Where the illuminated strands crossed, tiny rainbows formed, the same impossible colors they had seen in the white buffalo's fur. Sarah's breathing steadied, her skin cooling as the fever released its grip. Aurora watched it all with knowing eyes, the thunderbird pendant once again around her neck. When Sarah finally opened her eyes, they held a new depth, the look of one who had walked in spirit realms and returned carrying wisdom. "I saw," she began. "I know," Tahzay said softly. "I walked with you." Sarah touched the dream catcher, then her daughter's face, then Tahzay's hand. "The walls are breaking," she whispered. "I saw them falling like rain." The ancient warrior's shield strapped to Tahzay's back told its own story. Concentric circles of rawhide and buffalo horn, each ring marked with the deeds of those who had carried it before. His father had given it to him the day he earned his warrior name, though he had chosen the healer's path instead. Now, as rifle shots echoed across the snow-covered cliffs, both sides of his heritage would be tested. "Stay here," he told Sarah, securing the shield across the cave's inner entrance, where Aurora slept peacefully, protected by layers of blessed blankets and ancient prayers. "The shield holds powerful medicine. No harm will pass it." Sarah gripped his arm. Her fever-dream wisdom still lingered in her eyes. "There's another way. I saw it." But the trackers' voices were growing closer. Porter had picked up their trail, despite Tahzay's best efforts to conceal it. The man's skill was remarkable and deadly. "Circle round," Porter's voice carried through the morning air. "They're trapped against the cliff face." Tahzay checked his weapons. Bow, knife, and the rifle he'd rarely used, but kept maintained. He preferred Apache ways, but he would use whatever means necessary to protect his family. "Remember who I was," he told Sarah, switching to Apache, so the approaching men wouldn't understand. "Before I was a healer, I was Ghost Dancer, the one they couldn't catch." Recognition flickered in her eyes. Even in the settlements, they had heard of Ghost Dancer, the warrior who moved like smoke, who could appear and disappear at will, who had never been captured or defeated. "That was you." He nodded once, then melted into the shadows as the first tracker rounded the bend. The man never saw what hit him. A swift strike rendered him unconscious but alive. Tahzay had no desire to create more ghosts. Porter's voice carried again, closer now. "Johnson, report." Tahzay moved like his old namesake, using skills learned from childhood. The Apache warrior's way wasn't about brute force. It was about becoming one with the landscape, using every shadow, every whisper of wind. A second man went down quietly. A third slipped on suddenly loose rocks that hadn't been loose moments before. But Porter was different. The tracker had learned from his quarry, had studied Apache ways. "Ghost Dancer," he called out. "That's who you are, isn't it? I recognize. Your sign from the old days." Tahzay remained silent, circling. Porter stood with his back to a cliff wall, rifle ready, eyes scanning constantly. "You were legend once, the warrior who could vanish like smoke. Then you disappeared years ago. Now I know why. You chose to become a medicine man instead. There was something in Porter's voice, not just hatred or anger, but understanding. Tahzay remembered hearing that the tracker had lived with the Grow people for a time, had learned their ways before returning to his own world. You know what they'll do to your woman and child, Porter continued. The law doesn't look kindly on people who break its boundaries. Help us bring her back, and I'll make sure they're treated fairly. A hawk screamed overhead, the same red tail from before. In that moment, Sarah's fever dream flashed through Tahzay's mind, walls falling like rain. He stepped into view, bow lowered, but not put away. You speak of law, he said in clear English, but you follow the wrong trail. Porter's rifle didn't waver, meaning you hunt an innocent woman. The real criminal sits in your wagon train, wearing authority like a stolen blanket. Wagner, Porter's eyes narrowed. I've had my doubts about his story. The child she carries, it's his. He would hide his shame with false accusations. The tracker's rifle lowered slightly. That's a heavy charge. Truth is always heavy. That's why so few choose to carry it. A shot cracked the air, not from Porter, but from the last member of his team, hidden on a higher ridge. Tahzay moved with the liquid grace that had earned him his warrior name, but the bullet still grazed his arm. Before anyone could fire again, a new sound filled the canyon, a wolf's howl, hauntingly close. The white wolf appeared on the ridge above the hidden shooter, its form ghostly in the morning light. The man broke cover in terror, slipping on the icy rocks. Porter's reflexes were incredible. He caught his falling companion one-handed while keeping his rifle trained on Tahzay. Call off your spirit, wolf, Porter said, and let's talk properly. The wolf follows its own path, Tahzay replied. Like truth, we can only choose whether to follow where they lead. The white wolf howled again, and in the cave behind them, Aurora's cry joined it, not in fear, but in what sounded like greeting. The sound sent shivers through everyone present. Porter slowly lowered his rifle. I've seen enough spirit signs in my life to know when one is staring me in the face. He sighed. Wagner's story did have holes, big ones. The morning sun broke through the clouds then, catching the ancient shield's surface, making its medicine symbols seem to dance. Sometimes, Tahzay realized, the warrior's greatest victory came not from fighting, but from helping truth find its way into the light. The sacred pipe emerged from Running Cloud's medicine bundle, wrapped in lightning-struck deerskin. Its bowl, carved from red stone centuries ago, bore the marks of countless visions. The stem was adorned with eagle's feathers and strands of white buffalo hair, new additions that spoke of changing times. The council fire burned low as Running Cloud unwrapped the pipe with reverent hands. Behind him, the cave walls bore ancient paintings that seemed to move in the flickering light. Images of people coming together, of barriers breaking down, of new paths being forged through mountain passes. 3 generations ago, he began, his voice carrying to all gathered, Skywatcher, the greatest of our prophets, had a vision so powerful it took him 7 days to speak it all. He held up the pipe. Each word was captured in smoke signals, then painted here on these walls, waiting for the time of understanding. Sarah sat within the circle, Aurora sleeping peacefully in her arms. Porter had accompanied them back to the tribal lands, his presence both prisoner and guest. Thunderhorse watched him warily, but the tracker's calm acceptance of Apache ways had begun to earn grudging respect. Running Cloud packed the pipe with sacred tobacco, then added herbs known to open the spirit's eyes. Skywatcher spoke of a time when the world would grow smaller, when the distances between peoples would shrink like snow under spring sun. He lifted the pipe toward the 4 directions. He saw great changes coming, metal horses running on iron paths, birds made of silver carrying men above the clouds, words flying through air faster than arrows. The old man's eyes found Aurora, but most importantly, he saw the children of 2 worlds, not just one, but many over time. Each one a bridge, each one a healer of ancient wounds. He drew on the pipe, then passed it to Thunderhorse. He said we must learn to see with new eyes, or we would be blinded by the light of our own certainty. Thunderhorse took the pipe, studying its glowing bowl. "Our ways have kept us strong," he said, but his voice held more question than conviction. "The strongest tree," Running Cloud replied, "bends with the wind. The rigid tree breaks." He gestured to the paintings. "Look, closer at Skywatcher's vision. What do you see?" All eyes turned to the ancient artwork. In the firelight, new details emerged. Figures that seemed to dance between worlds, paths that spiraled like the Thunderbird's flight, circles that contained both darkness and light. "I was wrong," Thunderhorse said suddenly, passing the pipe to another elder. "I saw only the surface of the prophecy, the threat of change, but Skywatcher saw deeper. He saw survival through transformation." Sarah listened as the pipe made its way around the circle, each person adding their understanding to the growing wisdom. When it came to her, she hesitated, but Running Cloud nodded encouragement. "Among my people," she said carefully, accepting the pipe. "There are also prophecies, stories of a time when the barriers between peoples would fall away." She drew gently on the pipe as she had been taught, then passed it on. "Perhaps we're all seeing pieces of the same truth." Porter spoke next, surprising everyone with his knowledge of ceremony. "The Crow people taught me that wisdom doesn't belong to any one tribe. It flows like water, finding its own path." The pipe returned to Running Cloud, who held it up once more. Skywatcher's last words were these: "When the white buffalo walks in winter, when the wolf sings with a child's voice, when old enemies share the sacred smoke, then the time of healing will begin." Aurora stirred in her sleep, making a sound that echoed the white wolf's song. Above them, the sound of wing beats announced the arrival of the red-tailed hawk, landing at the cave's entrance as if drawn to the ceremony. "All the signs are here," Running Cloud said. "Skywatcher saw this moment, saw all of us gathered here. The question is not whether change will come, it is how we will meet it." Thunderhorse rose, his warrior's bearing softened by new understanding. He approached Sarah and Aurora, then did something unprecedented. He removed his own medicine pouch, a powerful talisman passed down through generations of warriors, and hung it gently around Aurora's neck alongside the Thunderbird pendant. "The old ways will not die," he said. "They will grow stronger by embracing new paths, new understandings." He touched Aurora's forehead in blessing. "This child carries not just two worlds in her blood, she carries hope for all worlds in her spirit." The pipe's smoke rose to the cave's ceiling, forming patterns that matched the ancient paintings. The prophecy had been fulfilled, but more importantly, it had been understood. The first flower pushed through melting snow near the cave's entrance, a tiny purple pasque flower, its delicate petals defying winter's lingering grip. Sarah discovered it while gathering herbs with Singing Bird, who'd been teaching her the medicine ways of the Apache people. The old woman smiled at her excitement, but her eyes held deeper wisdom. "First, flower carries many messages," Singing Bird said, kneeling to examine the bloom. "It tells us spring comes, yes, but it also shows us how new life can grow from frozen ground." She glanced meaningfully at Aurora, who lay wrapped in the white buffalo hide nearby, watching the sky with those wise, quiet eyes. The change of seasons had brought other changes too. Porter had returned to the wagon train with Thunderhorse and two other warriors, carrying proof of Wagner's crimes. The wagon master now sat in a military fort's jail, awaiting trial. More importantly, the truth had begun to heal old wounds between the communities. "Your people are discussing peace talks," Tahzay said, emerging from the cave with fresh medicine bundles. Since the prophecy's revelation, he had begun combining both Apache and Western healing ways, creating something new and powerful. "The agent at the fort speaks of a treaty." Sarah touched the pasque flower gently. "And what of us? Of Aurora?" The question hung in the spring air, heavy with possibility. Their daughter had grown strong through the winter months, showing signs of both worlds in fascinating ways. She responded to both English and Apache words, reached for both the Thunderbird pendant and the cross Sarah's mother had given her, and seemed equally at home in both cultures' traditions. "The grandmothers have been discussing this," Singing Bird said, beginning to gather the herbs they'd collected. They speak of creating a new kind of place, not quite Apache camp, not quite white settlement, a place where healing can happen, where both peoples can learn from each other. Tahzay nodded. Running Cloud calls it the middle ground, a place where Aurora and others like her can grow without having to choose between worlds. The idea wasn't entirely new. Sarah had seen it in her fever dreams, bridges building themselves, walls falling like rain. But hearing it spoken aloud made it more real, more possible. There will be resistance, she said, thinking of the deeply held prejudices on both sides. Yes, Singing Bird agreed. But look at this flower. Did it ask permission to grow here? Did it wait for winter to fully release its grip? She smiled. Some changes come because they must, because the time is right. A hawk's cry drew their attention upward. The red tail circled overhead, and with it, surprisingly, a bald eagle. Two hunters sharing the same sky without conflict. Aurora laughed at the sight, her voice carrying that hint of wolf song that still sent shivers through all who heard it. Besides, Tahzay added, we have powerful allies now. Porter has influence with the military. Thunderhorse speaks for the warriors. The grandmothers hold wisdom that both sides respect. He touched the warrior's shield that now hung permanently by their cave's entrance. And we have something stronger than any weapon, proof that two worlds can not only meet, but create something beautiful together. As if in response, Aurora reached for the pasca flower. Sarah started to stop her, fearing the delicate bloom would be crushed by baby hands. But her daughter simply touched the petals with surprising gentleness, and in that moment, something extraordinary happened. More flowers began pushing through the snow around them, creating a circle of purple blooms. Singing Bird's breath caught. The old stories speak of this, children of prophecy who could speak to growing things. But I never thought to see it with my own eyes. Sarah gathered Aurora in her arms, feeling the familiar weight of both the Thunderbird pendant and Thunderhorse's medicine pouch against her chest. Her daughter smelled of sage smoke and lavender soap, of moccasins and cotton blankets, of everything that made her uniquely herself. The middle ground, she said thoughtfully. It could work, not just for Aurora, but for everyone who feels caught between worlds. Tahzay lifted their daughter, holding her up to the strengthening spring sunlight. In the old days, my people would move with the seasons. Ladri, winter camps, summer hunting grounds. Perhaps this is just another kind of migration, not across land, but across understanding. The pasque flowers continued to multiply, their purple faces turned toward the sun. Above them, the hawk and eagle continued their shared dance against the blue sky. And in the distance, barely visible through the melting snow, the white wolf watched from the tree line, its presence both blessing and promise. Spring was coming to the mountains, bringing with it new possibilities, new growth, new ways of being. Like the first flower breaking through frozen ground, hope was pushing up through the hard earth of old hatreds and fears. And in Sarah's arms, Aurora, child of prophecy, bridge between worlds, dreamed the future into being, one gentle touch at a time. The two-path stone sat between them, its weathered surface carved with ancient symbols showing diverging trails. One path led to mountains, the other to plains, one to solitude, the other to community, one to tradition, the other to transformation. Running Cloud had brought it to them, as the spring winds carried news from both worlds. Your sister searches for you, he told Sarah. She travels with a group of sympathetic settlers. They offer you sanctuary in a new community north of here, he turned to Tahzay, and the tribal council has granted you the title of head medicine keeper, but you must live in the traditional camps, maintain the old ways. The stone's paths seemed to shimmer. In the firelight, Aurora slept peacefully in her cradleboard, decorated now with symbols from both cultures, crosses nestled beside thunderbirds, Bible verses written in Apache patterns. They would separate us, Tahzay said quietly. Sarah touched the stone's surface, feeling the ancient grooves beneath her fingers. All my life I've been told which path to take, proper paths, safe paths. She looked at their daughter. But Aurora shows us there are other ways. Running Cloud nodded slowly. Sky Watcher's prophecy speaks of the courage to walk between paths. He gestured to the stone. Perhaps these are not choices to make, but boundaries to break. The white wolf's howl echoed through the valley, closer now that spring had softened the land. Its presence had become a constant guardian, appearing whenever decisions weighed heavily upon them. My sister means well, Sarah continued. She wants to protect me, give Aurora a proper upbringing. Her hand found the Thunderbird pendant at her throat. But she doesn't understand that we've found something larger than propriety here. Tahzay added herbs to the fire, letting their smoke carry his prayers upward. The council fears losing our ways. They don't see that ways can grow stronger by growing together. He touched his medicine bundle, which now contained both Apache herbs and Western remedies. Like healing, two kinds of medicine, working as one. The middle ground, Sarah said softly, remembering their discussions of a place between worlds. Running Cloud's eyes brightened. Perhaps that is your answer, not choosing between paths, but creating a new one. He reached into his robe and pulled out a small object wrapped in buckskin. The grandmothers sent this. They said you would understand when the time came. Inside the wrapping lay a piece of the white buffalo hide, cut in the shape of a circle. On one side, it bore traditional Apache symbols. On the other, Western designs. But the edges had been sewn together with sinew and gold thread, creating not a division, but a continuous flow between patterns. The middle ground needs leaders, Running Cloud said. Those who have walked in both worlds, who understand both medicines. He smiled at Aurora. Those who can raise the next generation to be bridges, not barriers. As if responding to his words, the two-path stone began to glow softly, not with reflected firelight, but with an inner luminescence that traced new lines between the carved paths, creating connections where there had been only separation. Sarah gasped. Look! The stone's light pulsed in rhythm, with Aurora's peaceful breathing, with the white wolf's distant song, with the beating of their own hearts. In that moment the choice became clear, not as an either-or decision, but as an opportunity to transform the very nature of choosing. We will build it, Tahzay said firmly. Not just a place, but a new way of living, where both peoples can come for healing, of body, of spirit, of old wounds. Sarah took his hand, feeling the strength of their shared vision, where children like Aurora can grow up knowing all of their heritage, not just pieces. Running Cloud lifted the stone, its light still pulsing gently. Then you have chosen not to choose, but to create. This is wisdom. He wrapped the stone in blessed cloth. The time of walls is ending. The time of bridges begins. Outside, spring rain began to fall, gentle, nurturing, blending earth and sky, just as they sought to blend their worlds. Aurora stirred in her sleep, smiling as if sharing a secret with her dreams. Above the patter of raindrops, the white wolf's song rose again, joined now by others, a whole pack singing welcome to a new dawn. The path ahead would not be easy. There would be resistance, setbacks, moments of doubt. But looking at their daughter's peaceful face, at the glowing stone, at the buffalo hide medallion with its unified patterns, they knew they had chosen rightly. Some choices weren't about taking one path or another, but about transforming the very ground beneath the paths themselves. The unity blanket grew beneath skilled hands from both peoples, its patterns telling a new kind of story. Apache women worked beside settler women, weaving together traditional designs with European patterns. At its center, a thunderbird soared between mountain peaks, while Christian crosses merged with sacred medicine symbols around the edges. Like the middle ground itself, the blanket was becoming something unprecedented, not a compromise between cultures, but a transformation into something greater than its parts. Sarah sat with the weavers, Aurora watching intently from her cradleboard. The baby seemed fascinated by the threading patterns, her tiny hands reaching toward the colors, as if she could already read their meaning. Beside her, Catherine, Sarah's sister, worked on a section that blended biblical verses with Apache protection symbols. "I never thought I'd be doing this," Catherine admitted, her fingers moving steadily through the complex pattern. "When I set out to find you, I thought I'd be rescuing you. Instead," she gestured to the growing community around them. The middle ground had begun to take shape in a valley that both peoples considered sacred. Teepees stood alongside small cabins, while a large central lodge combined architectural elements from both cultures. Horses grazed peacefully, some with traditional Apache tack, others with Western saddles, many with a mixture of both. "Look there," Sarah said, nodding toward where Tahzay worked with both Apache medicine men and 2 Western doctors who had joined their community. They were comparing healing techniques, sharing knowledge that had been jealously guarded for generations. "That's what rescue really looks like, helping each other climb higher." Thunderhorse approached the weaving circle, his warrior's bearing softened by months of peace. He carried something wrapped in elk hide, new threads dyed in colors that neither culture had used before. "The grandmothers sent these," he said, carefully unwrapping the bundle. "They say the colors came to them in dreams, like Aurora, lights dancing between earth and sky. The threads seemed to shift color as they moved, somehow containing all hues while remaining distinct." The women gasped softly, understanding the gift's significance. These would be used for Aurora's section of the blanket, a symbol of paths yet to be walked. "The settlers bring more families tomorrow," Thunderhorse continued, "and 3 more Apache bands have asked to join us." His eyes held a mix of wonder and cautious hope. "They say even the Crow people have heard of this place." Porter, who had become their liaison with the military authorities, rode into the valley. His horse now wore tack that combined cavalry styling with Apache craftsmanship, like its rider, a bridge between worlds. "The territorial governor has approved our status," he announced to the gathering crowd. "The middle ground is officially recognized as an independent settlement, under joint protection of both the army and the Apache nation." A cheer went up. In English, Apache, and several other languages that had found their way to this sacred. The valley above them, the red-tailed hawk and bald eagle, continued their shared patrol of the skies, while at the valley's edge, the white wolf watched with quiet approval. Tahzay joined, Sarah at the weaving circle carrying Aurora. Their daughter immediately reached for the new threads, laughing that wolf song laugh that still sent shivers of recognition through all who heard it. "Running Cloud says she'll need a new name soon," he said softly, "one that reflects all that she is becoming." Sarah watched their daughter play with the mysterious threads, seemingly able to see patterns that others couldn't yet perceive. "She'll find it herself, I think, like she's helping us all find our way." The unity blanket's patterns shifted in the afternoon light, each design flowing into the next like tributaries joining a mighty river. Apache horse symbols galloped alongside European roses. Catholic saints shared space with spirit animals. Medicine wheels contained compass points. And through it all ran those strange new threads, drawing everything together in ways that felt both ancient and newborn. "My grandmother would have loved this," Catherine said suddenly, her fingers tracing a pattern that blended her childhood quilting with Apache storytelling. "She always said the best patterns were the ones you couldn't separate into pieces anymore." Thunderhorse nodded approvingly. "Like good medicine, once mixed it cannot be unmixed." He touched his medicine pouch, which now hung permanently around Aurora's neck, alongside the Thunderbird pendant. "The strongest healing comes from unity, not division." As the sun began to set, the women carefully folded the unfinished blanket. Its patterns would continue growing, changing, incorporating new elements as more people found their way to the middle ground. Like the community itself, it would never truly be finished, always evolving, always finding new ways to weave different threads into a stronger whole. The white wolf's song echoed through the valley, joined now by the evening prayers of many faiths rising together on the spring wind. Aurora's laugh rang out in harmony with it all, her small hands still reaching for those color-shifting threads. already weaving her own vision of a future where paths multiplied instead of divided. The peace pipe had seen 100 years of treaties, both kept and broken. Its bowl, carved from sacred red stone, bore the marks of generations of chiefs and leaders. Now it rested at the center of the largest council ever held in these territories. Apache leaders sitting alongside settler representatives, territorial officials beside tribal elders, all gathered in the great lodge of the middle ground. Running Cloud held the pipe first, as tradition demanded. "We meet today not to divide lands," he said in Apache with Porter translating, "but to unite peoples." He turned the pipe toward the 4 directions, then up to Father Sky and down to Mother Earth. "The old boundaries are falling, like sky," Watcher foretold. "We must decide how to face this new dawn together." The territorial governor, James Morrison, watched the ceremony with unexpected respect. He had arrived skeptical of this unprecedented gathering, but 3 days in the middle ground had opened his eyes. He had seen Apache medicine men working alongside Western doctors, their combined knowledge saving lives that either tradition alone might have lost. He had watched children from both peoples playing together, switching easily between languages, sharing games and stories from both cultures. "Before we begin," Morrison said, standing to address the gathering, "I wish to acknowledge a truth." He gestured to where Wagner sat in custody, brought to face both people's justice. "We have too often let the worst among us define our relationships. Today, we choose to let the best of us guide our future." Thunderhorse rose next, his warrior's presence commanding attention. "For generations, we fought to protect our ways from change. Now we see that some changes strengthen rather than weaken." He touched the medicine pouch he had given Aurora, which the child still wore as she sat quietly in Sarah's arms. "Like good medicine, good wisdom can come from many sources." The pipe began its journey around the circle. Each leader who held it spoke of changes seen, lessons learned, hopes for the future. Many spoke of the middle ground itself, how this experiment in unity had already begun reshaping the territory's understanding of what was possible. Sarah listened to it all, noting how the translations flowed more smoothly now, how understanding seemed to pass beyond mere words. Above them, smoke from the peace pipe rose to meet the lodge's central opening, where the red-tailed hawk and bald eagle could be seen circling together against the blue sky. When the pipe reached her, she spoke of her journey, from accused, fugitive to bridge between peoples. "My daughter was born in a time of division," she said, "but she lives in a time of healing. What we build here will be her inheritance, and the inheritance of all children who follow." Tahzay spoke next, his words carrying the weight of both warrior and healer. The old prophecies spoke not of one people conquering another, but of all. Peoples learning to walk new paths together. The middle ground is not just a place, it is a way of seeing, of living, of growing beyond the boundaries of fear. Aurora, as if sensing the moment's importance, reached toward the peace pipe with one small hand. In that instant, a shaft of sunlight broke through the smoke hole above, illuminating the pipe's sacred bowl. The red stone seemed to pulse with inner light, much as the two-path stone had done months before. Running Cloud's eyes widened. "The signs continue to speak," he said softly. "Even now, in this moment of human words, the spirits show their approval." The territorial governor leaned forward. "What is happening?" "A blessing," Thunderhorse explained, his voice full of wonder, "the kind our oldest stories speak of." The light spread, touching each person in the circle, while outside, the white wolf's song rose above the valley. Aurora laughed her spirit laugh, and several of the elders gasped as the sound seemed to make the peace pipe's light dance. Morrison looked around the circle, at faces both pale and copper-skinned, all bathed in the same mysterious radiance. "I came here to negotiate a settlement," he said slowly, "but I see now that something much larger is taking place." "Yes," Running Cloud agreed. "This is not an ending or a beginning. It is a transformation." He lifted the pipe one final time. "The old ways spoke of keeping peoples apart. The new way speaks of bringing peoples together, not to erase differences, but to weave them into something stronger. As if in response, Aurora reached again for the pipe, and this time her small fingers brushed its glowing surface. The light pulsed once more, bright enough to illuminate the unity blanket hanging on the lodge's wall, making its blended patterns seem to move like living things. "Let it be recorded," Morrison said formally, "that on this day we did not just make peace between peoples. We began the work of becoming one people, with many traditions, many strengths, many ways of seeing, all flowing together like rivers, joining to form something mightier than their separate streams." The council continued into evening, as leaders from both worlds worked to forge agreements that would protect and nurture what had begun in the middle ground. But the real work, they all knew, had already been accomplished. Not in the words, spoken or documents signed, but in the hearts open to new possibilities. Aurora's first steps were taken between worlds, from the crafted wooden floor of their cabin to the earthy ground outside, supported by a cradle board that told both people's stories. The mixed culture cradle, a masterwork combining Apache and European craftsmanship, had been created by artisans from both communities working together. Its surface bore intricate carvings, thunderbirds soaring alongside doves, crosses intertwining. With medicine wheels, new symbols emerging from the spaces between old ones. Tahzay and Sarah watched their daughter toddle toward Running Cloud, who waited with open arms. The old prophet's face creased with joy as Aurora reached him, her laugh carrying that hint of wolf song that had become familiar to all in the middle ground. "She walks the way of both peoples," Running Cloud said, lifting her gently, "as do we all now." The middle ground had flourished beyond anyone's expectations. What had begun as an experiment in coexistence had become a model for other territories. Families from both cultures sought homes here, drawn by stories of healing, not just of bodies, but of the spirit wounds that had divided peoples for generations. Sarah touched the Thunderbird pendant at her throat, now twin to the one Aurora wore. "Sometimes I wonder what would have happened if the wagon train hadn't abandoned me in that storm." "The spirits find their own paths," Tahzay replied, his hand finding hers. "Like water flowing down mountain, it will reach the valley, even if stones block its first choice of route." Their home reflected this truth. Traditional Apache medicines shared space with Western remedies. Sarah's family Bible sat beside, sacred, tribal bundles. Outside, gardens grew with plants from both people's healing traditions, tended by students eager to learn both ways. The white wolf appeared at the valley's edge, as it did most evenings now, but it was no longer alone. A pack had gradually formed around it, each wolf carrying some touch of white in its fur. The prophecy's signs continued to multiply, showing that transformation, once begun, had its own momentum. "Tomorrow brings more families," Running Cloud said, returning Aurora to her parents. "The Crow send their first healers to study here. Even tribes from far eastern lands ask to learn our way of living." Above them, the red-tailed hawk and bald eagle continued their shared patrol of the valley's skies. Aurora pointed up at them, speaking a word that somehow combined both people's names for the birds, one of many such bridges she was unconsciously building between languages. The cradleboard would soon be passed to another family, as Aurora had outgrown it. But like everything in the middle ground, it would carry forward the story of what was possible when hearts opened beyond the boundaries of tradition. Skywatchers. In prophecy spoke of many bridge children to come, Running Cloud said softly. Aurora was first, but she will not be last. Each generation will build new bridges, find new ways of bringing spirits together. As twilight painted the valley in shades of purple and gold, prayers rose in many languages from the scattered homes. The sound was like the unity blanket, made audible, separate threads of faith and tradition weaving together into something stronger, more beautiful than either culture could have created alone. Aurora's laugh rang out one more time as darkness settled, echoing off the mountainsides that had once divided peoples. Now those same peaks stood as guardians of this new way of living, this middle ground where differences strengthened rather than separated. In the end, it wasn't about choosing between worlds or even walking between them. It was about recognizing that all paths led to the same sacred ground, where love could grow strong enough to break down any wall, bridge any divide, and transform any heart that opened to its healing power.